Your mother's funeral was 3 days ago. Those 7 words stopped me cold in the middle of a Tuesday morning. I was standing in my kitchen with a coffee mug in my hand when my cousin Linda said them over the phone. At first, I thought I had misheard her. My mother's funeral? 3 days ago? That wasn't possible. My mother, Rose Bennett, had passed away only a week earlier after a long battle with heart disease. I had been waiting every day for details about the service. Waiting for a call. Waiting for a message. Waiting for someone in the family to tell me when I could say goodbye. Instead, I stood there staring at the sunlight spilling across my kitchen counter while my cousin filled the silence with nervous explanations. She thought I already knew. Everyone thought I knew. According to Linda, the funeral had taken place on Saturday morning at a church less than 15 miles from my house. More than 100 people had attended. Family, friends, neighbors, former co-workers, even distant relatives from out of state. Everyone had been there except me. My hand trembled so badly, I had to set the mug down before I dropped it. Why wasn't I told? I asked quietly. Linda hesitated. The pause told me more than her words ever could. Diane said she handled everything. She finally replied. Diane, my older sister, the woman who had always insisted on being in control of every family decision. The woman who took charge the moment Mom entered hospice care. The woman who promised she would keep everyone informed. I thanked Linda, ended the call, and sat down at my kitchen table. The room felt strangely silent. Outside, a lawnmower hummed somewhere down the street. A delivery truck rolled past my house. Ordinary sounds, ordinary life. Yet nothing felt ordinary anymore. 3 days. For 3 days, I had believed the funeral was still being planned while the service had already happened. For 3 days, people had assumed I chose not to attend my own mother's farewell. I picked up my phone and checked my messages again. Nothing. No voicemail. No text. No email. Nothing from Diane. Nothing from anyone close to her. I called her immediately. Straight to voicemail. I called. Again. The same result. A third time. Nothing. My chest tightened as memories began surfacing. Small moments from the past few years. Family gatherings where Diane answered questions before Mom could speak. Financial discussions she insisted on handling alone. Phone calls she promised to return but never did. At the time, I dismissed those moments as personality quirks. Sitting there now, they felt different. They felt intentional. I spent the rest of the afternoon making calls. Most people sounded shocked when they learned I had not attended. Some assumed I had been sick. Others believed I was traveling. One family friend accidentally revealed something that made my stomach sink. Diane told us you didn't want to come, she said. I felt the air leave my lungs. Didn't want to come. The words echoed through my mind. My mother and I had spoken nearly every day for decades. I visited her weekly. I drove her to appointments. I spent holidays at her house even after my own children moved away. The idea that I would skip her funeral willingly was absurd. Yet somehow that story had spread. As evenings settled over the neighborhood, I sat alone beside my living room window and watched the sky darken. Questions circled endlessly through my thoughts. Why would Diane do this? What was she afraid I might see? What happened during those missing days? Then another question appeared, one I couldn't shake no matter how hard I tried. If my sister had gone this far to keep me away from Mom's funeral, what else had she been hiding? I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured an empty chair where I should have been. A seat at my own mother's funeral that no one expected me to fill because someone had convinced them I chose not to come. By sunrise, I had made up my mind. I needed to see the cemetery for myself. The drive took less than 20 minutes, yet it felt much longer. The roads were familiar. I had traveled them countless times while taking Mom to doctor appointments, church services, and Sunday lunches. That morning, every traffic light seemed slower than usual. Every mile felt heavy. When I finally pulled into the cemetery parking lot, I sat in my car. For several minutes with the engine off. The place was quiet. A gentle breeze moved through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear birds singing. It was peaceful in a way that almost felt unfair. My world had been turned upside down, yet everything around me carried on as though nothing had happened. I stepped out and slowly followed the path toward the section where my mother had been buried. Fresh flowers surrounded the grave. White lilies, pink roses, small bouquets with handwritten cards tucked inside. Some names I recognized immediately. Family friends, former neighbors, people who had taken the time to come and say goodbye. I stood there staring at the arrangements, trying to imagine the service I had missed. The prayers, the stories, the final farewell. I should have been there. I should have been standing beside her. Instead, I was arriving days late like a stranger. I knelt carefully and brushed a few leaves away from the headstone. The engraving was simple and beautiful, exactly the way Mom would have wanted. Seeing her name carved into stone made everything feel painfully real. For months, I had prepared myself for the possibility of losing her. Nothing prepared me for losing the chance to say goodbye. I sat on a nearby bench and let old memories come back. I remembered summer afternoons when she taught me how to bake peach pie. I remembered rainy evenings when she sat beside my bed reading stories until I fell asleep. I remembered her laugh. Warm, steady, familiar, the kind of sound that made a house feel like home. As those memories surfaced, another realization slowly settled in. Diane knew how much Mom meant to me. She knew I would never willingly miss the funeral. She knew exactly what keeping me away would cost me. That thought hurt more than I expected. After nearly an hour, I stood and began walking back toward my car. Halfway there, I noticed an older woman approaching. Her face seemed familiar. Then I recognized her. It was one of Mom's longtime church friends. She greeted me kindly, but confusion crossed her face almost immediately. "Claire," she said softly, "I was surprised you were not at the service. Diane told everyone you could not make it because you were dealing with personal issues." I felt my stomach tighten. Another lie, another version of the story. I forced a polite smile and thanked her before continuing to my car. During the drive home, the pieces began forming a pattern. This was no misunderstanding. It was not a forgotten phone call or a scheduling mistake. Too many people had been told the same thing. Too many details had been carefully managed. Someone had worked very hard to make sure I stayed away. The question was no longer whether Diane had hidden the funeral from me. The question was why. I spent the next 2 days making phone calls that I should never have needed to make. Every conversation left me with more questions than answers. Some relatives sounded uncomfortable the moment Diane's name came up. Others became strangely cautious, choosing their words with care as if they were afraid of saying too much. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Everyone had been told some version of the same story. According to Diane, I had been overwhelmed. According to Diane, I needed privacy. According to Diane, I preferred not to attend the service. The details changed depending on who was listening, but the outcome was always the same. I was absent, and nobody questioned why. One afternoon, I met my cousin Rachel for lunch at a small diner Mom used to love. The place had not changed in 20 years. The same red booths, the same homemade pies displayed behind the counter. Mom always ordered chicken soup no matter the season. Sitting there without her felt strange. Rachel stirred her iced tea for a moment before finally speaking. "Claire, there is something I never understood." I looked up. "What is that?" She hesitated. "Diane seemed unusually concerned about who was talking to whom during the week after your mother passed away. That caught my attention immediately." "What do you mean?" Rachel leaned closer. "She kept asking people whether they had spoken to you. More than once. It felt odd at the time, but I did not think much of it." I sat quietly as those words settled into place beside everything else I had learned. Diane had not simply forgotten to notify me. She had actively monitored communication. That required effort, planning, intent. When I returned home, I opened an old photo album that Mom had given me years earlier. Inside were photographs spanning decades of family history. Birthdays, graduations, holiday dinners, summer vacations. In nearly every picture, Mom stood between Diane and me. Looking at those images, I remembered a version of my sister that seemed very far away now. We were never especially close, but we had shared a lifetime of family milestones. Somewhere along the way, something had changed. Or perhaps I had simply failed to notice who she had become. Later that evening, I checked my voicemail again. There was a new message waiting. The voice belonged to a man I did not recognize. His tone was professional, calm, measured. He introduced himself as Michael Donovan and asked me to return his call regarding my mother's estate. I listened twice to make sure I had heard correctly. My mother's estate. The message was brief, but one sentence stayed with me. "There are several matters that require clarification." Clarification. The word lingered in my thoughts. The next morning, I called him back. His assistant scheduled a meeting for the following afternoon at his office downtown. She sounded relieved when I confirmed my attendance, which struck me as unusual. Most legal appointments were routine. This one clearly was not. After hanging up, I found myself standing motionless in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I had learned about the funeral only days earlier. Outside, clouds drifted slowly across the sky. Everything appeared calm, yet beneath that calm, I could feel something shifting. The lies surrounding the funeral were no longer isolated incidents. They were connected to something larger. Something important enough that Diane had worked hard to control information and keep me away. For the first time, I began to wonder whether the funeral itself had never been the real objective. Maybe it had simply been the first move in a much bigger plan. The following afternoon, I arrived at Michael Donovan's office 15 minutes early. The building stood in a quiet section of downtown, surrounded by mature oak trees and carefully maintained brick sidewalks. Mom had always appreciated places like that. Professional, orderly, reliable. As I sat in the reception area, I noticed framed photographs of local landmarks and community events hanging on the walls. Everything about the office projected stability, yet I could not shake the uneasy feeling growing inside me. When Michael finally appeared, he greeted me warmly and led me into a conference room overlooking the city. He was probably in his late 50s, dressed neatly, with the calm demeanor of someone accustomed to handling difficult family situations. After we exchanged a few pleasantries, he opened a folder and studied me carefully. Then he asked a question that immediately caught me off guard. "Claire, why were you not at your mother's funeral?" For a moment, I simply stared at him. Of all the things I expected to discuss, that was not one of them. "I was never told when it was happening," I replied. Michael's expression changed instantly. Not dramatically, just enough for me to notice. His eyebrows lifted slightly. His posture stiffened. He removed his glasses and placed them on the table. "You were never informed?" he asked. "No." The silence that followed felt unusually heavy. Michael looked down at the documents in front of him and slowly turned several pages. "That is concerning," he said quietly. "Very concerning." My heart began beating faster. "Why?" I asked. He leaned back in his chair and folded his hands together. "Because your mother left very specific instructions before her passing." I felt my stomach tighten. Mom had always been organized. She planned everything carefully. If she left instructions, there was a reason. "What kind of instructions?" I asked. Michael hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Some matters were intended to be discussed with both daughters present. Your attendance was expected." Expected. The word echoed in my mind. Not optional. Not preferred. Expected. Michael continued reviewing the file. "When your sister informed our office that family arrangements were being handled privately, we assumed everyone had been properly notified." I looked out the window for a moment, trying to process what I was hearing. Diane had not only controlled communication with relatives, she had apparently controlled communication with professionals involved in Mom's affairs as well. "Did Diane tell you I knew about the funeral?" I asked. Michael nodded slowly. "Yes, that was our understanding." I felt a chill move through me despite the warm afternoon sunlight streaming through the glass. Every answer seemed to uncover another layer of deception. Michael eventually slid a sealed envelope across the table. My eyes immediately recognized my mother's handwriting on the front. It was elegant and unmistakable. Seeing it nearly brought tears to my eyes. "This was prepared several months ago," he explained. "Your mother instructed that it remain sealed until certain discussions could take place." I gently touched the envelope but did not open it. Somehow, it felt like Mom was still speaking through it, still trying to reach me. Michael glanced at another document before looking back at me. "Claire, there are several matters that need clarification before we proceed. Until then, nothing can move forward." As I left the office later that afternoon, one thought stayed with me. Diane had worked very hard to keep me away from a funeral. But based on what I had just learned, the funeral itself may have been only one piece of a much larger puzzle. For 2 days, I kept the sealed envelope on my dining room table. Every time I walked past it, I felt Mom's presence in a way that was difficult to explain. Her handwriting brought back memories of birthday cards, holiday notes, and little messages she used to leave on the refrigerator when I visited. Part of me wanted to open it immediately. Another part felt certain that I needed to understand more before I did. On the third morning, Michael called. His voice was calm as always, but there was a seriousness beneath it that immediately caught my attention. He asked whether I could return to his office that afternoon. When I arrived, he already had several documents spread across the conference table. He waited until I sat down before speaking. "Claire, there is something you need to know about your mother's final." Instructions. I nodded and listened carefully. Michael explained that several months before her passing, Mom had arranged a series of meetings with him regarding her estate. She had reviewed every detail personally. She updated documents. She organized records. She left written guidance. None of that surprised me. Mom planned everything. What surprised me was what came next. According to Michael, one specific set of instructions required both daughters to be present together before certain information could be disclosed. Mom had been very clear about that requirement. Both daughters. Together. I felt my stomach tighten. And that never happened, I said quietly. Michael shook his head. No, it did not. He opened a folder and showed me several notes from those meetings. The handwriting was Mom's. The dates were recent. In one note, she emphasized the importance of family transparency. In another, she specifically mentioned that no single person should control access to information after her death. Reading those words felt unsettling, almost as if Mom had anticipated problems, almost as if she knew something might happen. Michael slid another document toward me. There is more. I studied the page carefully. It referenced financial assets that were not listed among the records I already knew about. The account numbers meant nothing to me, but the existence of the documents did. I looked up at him. I have never seen any of this before. That is because these records were intended to be reviewed during the joint meeting, he replied. My mind immediately went to Diane. Had she known about these documents? Had she discovered something before I did? Suddenly, many of her actions looked different. The secrecy, the control, the effort to manage communication, the determination to keep me away. None of it felt random anymore. Michael continued explaining the timeline. Several calls had been made after Mom's passing. Certain meetings had been postponed. Information had not been shared as originally intended. Each detail seemed small by itself. Together, they formed a troubling picture. By the end of the meeting, I sat quietly staring at the papers spread before me. Outside the window, downtown traffic moved steadily through the afternoon sunlight. Inside that room, however, everything felt strangely still. I was beginning to understand that Mom's final plans involved much more than a funeral or a simple estate settlement. She had built safeguards into the process. She had created conditions. And somehow, those conditions had been disrupted. As I gathered my things to leave, Michael looked at me carefully. Claire, there is one person who may be able to answer some of these questions. Who? I asked. He closed the folder and spoke a name I had not heard in years. Thomas Reed, your mother's financial advisor. The moment I heard it, I knew my search for answers was far from over. Thomas Reed's office was located on the second floor of a modest brick building on the edge of town. It was not the kind of place that drew attention. The sign outside was small. The waiting room was simple. Yet the moment I walked through the door, I recognized several framed photographs of community events that Mom had attended over the years. Thomas had clearly known her for a long time. A receptionist led me into his office, and when he entered a few moments later, I immediately saw recognition in his eyes. He stood, shook my hand warmly, and offered his condolences. There was genuine sadness in his expression when he spoke about Mom. That alone told me more than I expected. After a few minutes of conversation, Thomas opened a thick folder resting on his desk. Your mother was one of the most organized clients I ever worked with, he said. She believed in planning ahead. I smiled slightly. That sounded exactly like her. Then his expression grew more serious. Michael informed me that you were not present for the family meeting that was supposed to take place after her passing. I nodded. I was never told about it. Thomas lowered his eyes for a moment before opening the folder. Several documents were neatly arranged inside. Financial statements, trust records, account summaries. Most of it was unfamiliar to me. Your mother instructed me to discuss these records only after both daughters were present together, he explained. That was her condition, the same condition Michael had mentioned. Again, everything pointed back to that missing meeting. Thomas slowly slid a document across the desk. At first glance, it appeared to be a standard trust summary. Then I noticed the balance listed near the bottom of the page. I looked twice to make sure I was reading it correctly. The amount was far larger than anything I expected. My eyes moved back to Thomas. He remained calm. What exactly is this? I asked. He folded his hands together. Several years ago, your mother established a private family fund. The room suddenly felt very quiet. A family fund? Thomas nodded. She wanted resources available for future generations. Grandchildren, great-grandchildren, educational opportunities, medical needs, family emergencies. She believed strongly in preserving long-term security. I stared at the document again. The value had grown significantly over time through investments and careful management. Mom had never mentioned it to me. Then again, perhaps she had intended to explain everything during the meeting that never happened. Thomas continued reviewing the records. Every page seemed to reveal another layer of planning. Detailed instructions, conditions, oversight provisions, safeguards. Mom had clearly spent years building this structure. Nothing about it appeared accidental. Eventually, I noticed a specific clause highlighted in one section. The language was formal, but the meaning was clear. Certain actions required transparency between both daughters before any distribution could occur. I read the paragraph twice. Then a troubling realization began forming. If Diane had intentionally prevented that meeting from taking place, she may have disrupted the very process Mom designed. Thomas seemed to recognize the same concern. Your mother was careful, he said quietly. She anticipated the possibility of disagreements. That is why these conditions exist. I left his office carrying copies of several documents and more questions than ever. But one thing was becoming impossible to ignore. Whatever Diane thought she would gain by keeping me away, she may not have understood the rules Mom had already put in place years before. Over the next week, I reviewed every document Thomas and Michael had given me. I spread the papers across my dining room table each morning and studied them for hours. The more I read, the more I understood my mother's thinking. She had not created the family fund simply to preserve money. She had designed it to preserve trust. Every safeguard pointed toward the same goal. No one person was supposed to control the process. No one person was supposed to have access to critical information without accountability. Mom had built the entire structure around cooperation. That was why both daughters were required to participate. That was why important disclosures had to occur in shared meetings. That was why records needed multiple signatures before certain actions could move forward. One afternoon, Michael called and asked me to stop by his office again. When I arrived, he already had several new documents waiting on the conference table. His expression was serious. We discovered additional correspondence, he explained. He handed me copies of emails exchanged shortly after Mom's passing. As I read them, a clear timeline began emerging. Diane had contacted multiple professionals involved with Mom's affairs. She had represented herself as the primary family contact. She had requested changes to scheduled meetings. She had postponed discussions. In some cases, she had indicated that I was unavailable. In others, she suggested that I preferred not to participate. None of it was technically dramatic. Yet taken together, the pattern was impossible to miss. Michael pointed to one particular communication. "This is important," he said. The message had been sent only 2 days after Mom passed away. In it, Diane appeared eager to move certain administrative matters forward quickly. Very quickly, I felt a knot form in my stomach. For the first time, I began wondering whether she believed keeping me away would simplify access to information about the fund. If that had been her assumption, she had misunderstood Mom completely. Michael opened another folder. "There is a complication," he said. I looked up immediately. "What kind of complication?" He adjusted his glasses and carefully explained the situation. Because the required joint meeting never occurred, several conditions within the family fund remained unsatisfied. As a result, key portions of the structure could not proceed according to the original timeline. Certain distributions were paused. Certain authorizations remained inactive. In legal terms, the system had essentially frozen itself until the missing requirements could be addressed. I sat back in my chair as the significance of those words settled over me. Mom had anticipated exactly this kind of problem. She had built protections into the process years earlier. Instead of giving one person more control, the safeguards did the opposite. They stopped everything. Michael nodded as if he understood what I was thinking. "Your mother was very thorough." Suddenly, Diane's behavior looked even more reckless. If she believed excluding me would provide an advantage, she had accomplished the exact opposite. Every attempt to control the situation had triggered the safeguards Mom carefully designed. As I drove home that evening, I found myself thinking less about money and more about Mom. She knew her family. She knew our strengths. She knew our weaknesses. Somehow, years before any of this happened, she had prepared for possibilities that I never imagined. For the first time since learning about the funeral, I felt something unexpected. Confidence. The truth was beginning to surface on its own. And once it did, there would be no way to hide it. 3 weeks after my first meeting with Michael, the long-awaited family gathering was finally scheduled. It would take place in the same conference room where I had spent countless hours reviewing documents and piecing together the truth. Michael explained that all relevant parties needed to be present: family representatives, advisors, witnesses connected to the estate. Most importantly, Diane and me. The morning of the meeting, I arrived early. The conference room looked exactly as I remembered. Sunlight filtered through the large windows. Neatly organized folders rested at each seat around the polished table. Everything appeared calm on the surface, yet the atmosphere carried a quiet tension. One by one, people entered the room. Some greeted me warmly. Others offered polite nods. Several looked uncomfortable. It was obvious that many of them had begun hearing different versions of recent events. Then Diane arrived. For the first time since Mom's passing, we found ourselves sitting across from one another. She looked composed at first glance, but I noticed subtle signs of strain. Her smile seemed forced. Her movements felt rigid. More than once, she glanced toward the folders waiting on the table. Michael began by reviewing procedural matters. His voice remained steady and professional. Then he carefully walked everyone through the timeline following Mom's death. Dates, meetings, communications, postponements. Nothing emotional, nothing dramatic, just facts. As the timeline unfolded, a pattern emerged that everyone in the room could see for themselves. Certain notifications had not been delivered. Certain meetings had been delayed. Certain assumptions had been presented as facts. Michael never accused anyone directly. He simply presented the documented record. The effect was far more powerful than any argument could have been. The room grew quieter with each page. Next came the correspondence. Copies of emails, scheduling requests, notes from advisors, records from estate administrators. Every document reinforced the same conclusion. Information had not flowed according to Mom's instructions. The required transparency had been interrupted. More importantly, the interruptions could be traced. I watched faces around the table change as people connected the dots. Some looked surprised. Others appeared disappointed. A few exchanged brief glances, but said nothing. Diane remained silent. Then Michael opened a folder that none of us had seen before. Inside were additional notes from Mom's final planning sessions. He read several passages aloud. Mom emphasized fairness. She emphasized cooperation. She emphasized honesty between family members. Hearing her words spoken in that room felt strangely emotional. Even though she was gone, her voice still carried authority. Her intentions were unmistakably clear. At one point, Michael paused and looked around the room. The safeguards functioned exactly as designed, he said. That single sentence changed everything. The family fund had not been compromised. The estate had not been damaged. The protections Mom established years earlier had done their job. Instead of rewarding secrecy, they had stopped the process entirely until the truth could be verified. A long silence followed. No one argued. No one raised their voice. There was nothing left to debate. The documents spoke for themselves. As I sat there listening, I realized something important. I no longer felt anger. The questions that had consumed me for weeks finally had answers. The confusion was gone. The uncertainty was gone. In their place stood something much stronger. The truth. And for the first time since learning I had missed Mom's funeral, I knew the end of this story was finally within reach. In the weeks that followed, the estate process finally moved forward the way Mom intended. The confusion that had dominated every conversation began to fade as verified records replaced assumptions. Michael and Thomas worked carefully through each requirement Mom had established years earlier. Every safeguard was reviewed. Every condition was satisfied. Every decision was documented. The family fund remained exactly where Mom had left it, protected by the structure she designed. When the final review meeting was scheduled, I arrived with a very different feeling than I had carried during those first painful weeks. I was no longer searching for answers. I already knew the truth. What remained was understanding what Mom wanted her legacy to accomplish. As the meeting began, Michael presented the completed findings. The fund would be administered according to Mom's written instructions. Resources would be preserved for future generations. Educational support programs she outlined would move forward. Emergency assistance provisions would remain available for family members facing genuine hardship. Listening to those plans, I realized that Mom had never viewed the fund as money alone. To her, it represented security, opportunity, and responsibility. She had spent years building something that could outlive her, something designed to help people she might never even meet. Then Michael handed me the sealed envelope I had first seen weeks earlier. This time, he nodded and gave me permission to open it. My hands trembled slightly as I unfolded the letter. The handwriting was unmistakable. It felt as though Mom had stepped into the room. The letter was not about finances. It was not about legal matters. It was about family. She wrote about gratitude. She wrote about forgiveness. She wrote about the importance of character when life became difficult. Near the end, she included a passage that brought tears to my eyes. She thanked me for every hospital visit, every phone call, every quiet afternoon we spent together during her final years. She noticed everything: the rides to appointments, the grocery trips, the evenings when I simply sat beside her and listened. I had never done those things expecting recognition. They were acts of love. Yet somehow, knowing she remembered them meant more to me than I could describe. When I finished reading, I sat quietly for several minutes. The room around me seemed to disappear. For the first time since her passing, I felt a sense of peace. Not because of the outcome, not because of the fund, not because the truth had finally emerged. Peace came from knowing that Mom understood who I was. She knew my heart. She knew my intentions. Nothing that happened afterward could take that away. As months passed, life slowly returned to normal. The legal matters concluded. The family fund entered its next chapter. Some relationships changed permanently. Others healed with time. Diane and I rarely spoke. There were wounds that could not simply be erased. Yet I no longer carried the anger that once consumed me. Holding on to it would have given the past too much power. Instead, I focused on the lesson Mom left behind. Character reveals itself when nobody expects accountability. Truth has a way of surfacing, even when people work hard to bury it. And sometimes the greatest inheritance is not money at all. It is the certainty that the people who truly knew us never doubted who we were. A few months later, I returned to the cemetery alone. Fresh flowers rested near Mom's headstone. The afternoon sun warmed the grass beneath my feet as I stood there quietly. This time, I was not grieving the goodbye I missed. I was honoring the connection that never disappeared. I thanked her for the lessons she taught me. I thanked her for the wisdom she left behind. And as I walked back toward my car, I realized something that finally made me smile. Long after the meetings ended, long after the documents were filed away, and long after the fund continued into the future, Mom's greatest gift was still the same. She made sure the truth found